Are you sick of the same old disability stereotypes? We were too, so we did something about it. Welcome to That Was Unexpected, the Disability Lifestyle podcast for everyone. Brought to you by Youngcare and hosted by me, Lisa Cox. Join our amazing guests as we delve into topics that don't often hit the headlines. So let's do this. Prepare for the unexpected. If you're low vision like me or have other accessibility requirements, check out our show notes. Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of land on which we record. We pay respects to the elders, past, present and emerging.
Welcome back to another episode, everyone. And today we have Emily Dash and Tracey Corbin-Matchett. Is that up and else?
Yeah.
CEO of Bus Stop Films to have a chat about disability representation in film, media, advertising, all the things. So I'm really here for this conversation and having a chat as well about representation on both sides of the camera. So I'll start with you, Emily. Tell us a bit about yourself, please.
So, I am an actor, writer, producer, and disability advocate who has been working across Australian stages and screens for about the last 10 years. And a lot of my work is focused on increasing representation for people with disability. And also looking at other forms of social justice and how they intersect. I should say, I also identify as a queer person as well, but I'm also interested in representing community, underrepresented communities that I'm not a part of, and working with those communities in really authentic and meaningful ways to improve representation across the board.
That's very cool. Sounds like you were doing a lot of things. And how did you get into the industry and all the work you're doing?
So it's quite an interesting story. I studied at Sydney University and did a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Gender Studies, and achieved first class honours in sociology. And then I took a break from uni and from academics because I had no life after my honours degree, and I decided that I was going to get into the arts. Back into the arts, because I'd always been a writer, but I just had never found opportunities to act or things like this. So I ended up going to various classes and things and working on my craft, and from there it was just sort of a snowball effect of being really open to things, meeting people, and just going where the opportunities led. Saying that, there's obviously been a few barriers for me along the way in terms of attitudes and all sorts of things. So it's not been completely smooth sailing, but I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, and to also try and make opportunities for others as well.
Definitely. And some of those barriers that you spoke about, could you talk about that a bit more? What sort of things do you experience?
So I think the biggest barriers that I experience in terms of employment is that attitudinal barriers. So, even in initiatives that I've been a part of as an emerging artist, for diversity and things like this, often don't focus on people with disability. We still remain on Australian stages and screens the most underrepresented group in our society, And particularly I find for people with high care needs, often that sort of perspective doesn't get represented, which, you know, there's a lot of great disability representations on our screens and things are improving, but yeah, I really want to push the envelope a bit in terms of representing that real high care needs experience.
Okay. I know Bus Stop Films, Trace, you're doing a lot of really great work around this area. To, tell us a bit more about how Bus Stop Films is helping to employ people with disabilities in film, TV, and all productive production.
Well, thanks, Lisa. So Bus Stop Films, we have a dedicated business unit called Bus Stop Employment, which is really focusing on supporting people with any type of disability who are looking for work in the film, TV and commercial production sector. At the same time, working with the industry to build confidence. So upskilling producers in how to make content inclusively, how to support people with disability on set. We have these amazing unicorns, our set trained support workers who understand how production works, but also understand how to support people with disability in the workplace. So they're not there on set getting selfies with the talent or pitching their project to the director. They know their role. And we're the only employment service that is servicing the screen industry, and our service is open to anyone with any type of disability. So we have deaf, disabled and neurodivergent talent amongst our cohort, and it's about plugging them in, like working with them to identify what their skill sets are, what areas they like to work in, what areas they need upskilling in, and then plugging them into opportunities, because jobs in the screen industry, they're not advertised on Seek, they're not advertised on employment boards. It's about who you know and getting those connections, and so we plug them into those opportunities through our really strong network.
Awesome. And I've known of Bus Stop for a long, long time. First met Genevieve Clay-Smith, one of the founders, ages ago. But tell us a bit more about the background of Bus Stop Films, how you started, how you became CEO.
So Bus Stop started coming up 16 years ago when Genevieve Clay-Smith and Eleanor Winkler together created a beautiful short film called Be My Brother. That film won Tropfest, which at the time was the biggest short film festival in the Southern Hemisphere, and their lead actor, the amazing Jared O'Dwyer, the actor, one word, won Best Actor on the night. Fun fact, the same night that he won Best Actor, Rebel Wilson won Best Actress. Oh my goodness me, Hollywood. And they developed this beautiful short film in an inclusive way, and they worked with people with disability in crew roles to bring the production to life, and that sort of birthed Bus Stop Films, and expanding that into an accessible film studies curriculum, and acknowledging the pathways to creativity that can really benefit the lives of people with disability. I met Genevieve when I was working at Screen New South Wales in Policy, and a lot of the work that I was doing there was on projects and initiatives that supported equity. So I worked on She Shoots, which was around supporting people, women, to get into more camera and sound roles, and as well as the first iteration of Screenability, which supported people with disability to gain employment. Emily, I think you might have been part of that original cohort.
Way back in the day.
Way back in the day. And so I met Jen, and I really just loved the premise. You know, I'm hard of hearing, and my eldest daughter is deaf, and I've been part of the disability community for a long time, way too long. And I just love this unity of creativity and social justice. And when I finished up at Screen New South Wales and I was working for myself, Bus Stop approached me to do their social media. And so I took them on as a client, and then a couple of months later, they were like, "We like you. Would you like to be the CEO?" So that was 5 years ago, and it was just in Sydney then. And now we've grown to a national organisation, partnerships across the country, supporting, you know, education, content creation, advocacy, and employment for people with disability in this amazing industry.
Oh, that's so awesome. And actually, before we go any further, it's your birthday. Jumping midway to do something completely unrelated. Happy birthday! So we should have said at the beginning. And Tracey, also an OAM which for those outside Australia is a federal over here. So congratulations on that also. All of the fantastic work that you're doing. But Emily, you work, or you both work on different sides of the camera, I suppose. Emily working in front of the camera, but you also do script writing and things behind the scenes. Do you have a favourite?
I do. Well, people always ask me this question, and it's interesting because you get different things out of acting and writing, particularly different things between stage and screen. So I think, being in front of the camera is very important because you get to represent your own. Well, for me, I get to represent my own physical experience because obviously that informs everything I do. But with writing, I'm able to work with other artists and bring their voices to the front as well and support them to be creative. So, for example, I've worked on a couple of, Bus Stop Films is a great example because they've always been very supportive of my career right from the get-go. So, and that's in a variety of ways. So, a film that I created, wrote and performed in 2020 was a film called Groundhog Night, which it's a comedy drama about living with high care needs and being part of a family unit. And that was all very inclusively made and authentically done. So really enjoyed that process. But then I've also gone on to write other projects for Bus Stop Films, including a film called Valiant, which we made with Northcott around healthy and respectful relationships when you have a disability. And then I also helped create and write a film called Peaches and Cream, which was specifically around that idea of sexting and being safe in sort of those digital kind of mediated relationships. So yeah, acting and writing brings different things, and I'm super grateful and excited not just to be an independent artist for myself, but also to work with great organisations like Bus Stop Films.
They sure do a great job. And Trace, you mentioned before that you identify as someone with a disability or hard of hearing. And do you find that people treat you differently when they discover that, I suppose?
I think they do. Sometimes they go, "Oh, you don't look like you have a disability," or but you're doing so well. I think it's because with hearing loss, it's a non-visible disability. And it's funny because I often think about, do I wear my hearing aids for other people's benefit? Like I'm quite happy with my hearing aids off, just running my own life, making up words and filling in the gaps of things I think people are saying, and lip reading. Yeah, it is. And I also have spina bifida and occulta and scoliosis. So I have some other things, but to me, they're just part of, that's just what my spine looks like, and that's just what my body does. It is. And I guess too, being a CEO, people don't expect that. I mean, my kids call me undercover CEO all the time. They're like, "Mum, no one would ever know you're a CEO." Kids, they're such levelers. It's funny. I got an Uber. You always get wise words from an Uber driver, and I got an Uber driver a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, people would like, you disabled people, you're just doing all the stuff all the time now. And I'm like, well, yeah, so we should be.
Exactly. And it's one of the stereotypes that we definitely need to break down, that people with disabilities can do so much more than be Paralympians and all the other tiny little narrow stereotypes and boxes that we're put in. I'll just pause for a moment while I look at my questions here. Oh, okay. So Trace and Emily, a lot of things have happened with regard to representation in film and TV all over the place, but we still have a long way to go. So from both of your different perspectives, as CEO at an organisation doing great things and as a scriptwriter and an actor, how do you see this going, representation of disability?
Say in the last sort of 5 years, we've seen a lot of really great improvements in representation of people with disability on screens and on stages, but there's still a long way to go. And what I really want to see is that these initiatives to improve diversity one day will not be necessary because it will just be a part of what we do in the Australian arts industry. And so it's not that wonderful organisations like Bus Stop Films will cease to exist, because, you know, that's not what we want. We want organisations like that to always be present, but it will be less of a unicorn, if I can put it that way.
Really great point. The diversity quotas or anything like that, they're great maybe for the short term to get things rolling, but in the long term, we'd certainly hope it's just common sense and what you do, and you don't need a special program or something like that to include people with disabilities. And Trace, from your perspective, how do you see diversity and inclusion happening?
Well, it's certainly changing, and we are moving in the right direction. We still do have a while to go, because, you know, we've achieved parity when organisations like Bus Stop Films don't need to exist anymore. That we just become a regular production company and regular film school program, still making amazing films. When I first started working at Bus Stop, production companies would come to me like they were being sent to the principal's office, like they were being made to hire a person with disability. Like, oh gosh, Screen New South Wales has said, I can't get this funding unless I hire a person with disability, and they told me to talk to you. And now, you know, we have such great demand for our services that we have a team of 5 people full-time just working on employment, which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because there's a desire. I mean, there's still a lot to go around stereotypes and tropes, and there's still a long way to go around accessible sets. There's still a long way to go around who pays for access. There's still some, you know, conversations to be had. And don't get me started on the disconnect between the screen industry and employment support under the new frameworks.
Making a note. Don't ask.
Making a note. That's my latest advocacy push. But I think also to the industries, and I talk about it in general, film, TV and commercial production and advertising, are seeing the sense and the impact of disability and intersectional diversity around strong storytelling, and also around amazing capacity in terms of labour and workforce. So the needle is moving, but I think the last, and Em spoke to it, I think the biggest barrier is just the attitude, and that people have low expectations around still what people with disability can do. So that's, you know, that's going to be the last bit that we move.
Yeah, 100%. And Uber drivers are a great example of that. Oh, really? You're disabled and you're working, you're living life. And so again, a question from both of your perspectives: what challenges, apart from social attitudes, which have a long way to go, physically, what sort of barriers do you have either on set, or Trace as an employer, or someone organising things behind the scenes, and Emily from your point of view as an actress?
couple of things. Lots and lots of things. I could talk about this for an hour. But, it's a perfect example of, like, when I'm making films, having to find wheelchair-accessible locations. Because we can make all the authentically, inclusively made stories that we want, but if we don't have the infrastructure to support them, and if people don't put the time and energy into finding the resources that we need, then those stories have nowhere to go. And people get exhausted and tired and end up not telling those stories, and the industry is worse off and sort of less colourful for it. When we made Groundhog Night, we had to go through, I think, about 3 different locations before we found the one that we needed that was beneficial to the story. And I was lucky that I had a team behind me that was not going to give up until we did that. So that's one barrier, and that's that's something that I'm working on in terms of making sure we have that infrastructure. But I do want to also go back to the idea of paying people for the time and the energy that they give, and valuing people's contribution. Obviously there are times where I'm more than happy to volunteer for things, but when I'm working as an artist, that needs to be valued and given its due. So yeah, definitely paying people, and also being trauma informed, so that when people are asking people with disability or from other underrepresented backgrounds in the industry to give their personal perspective, being aware of the how taxing that can be on a person, and we're happy to do it, but making sure that is valued and made space for, and that it does get used in a meaningful way, because there's nothing worse than spending the time and energy to give your perspective, and then that not being translating to anything meaningful, and making change. I mean, I could give examples of that, but I think most people listening will be aware. So
Yeah.
And what about you, Tracey?
When you're organising talent with disabilities on a set, what sort of things do you tell people they need to be aware of?
Well, we, it is part of our ethos. So every set that we make is going to involve people with disability. Best practice for us is that they do our inclusion in action workshop prior, which Em helped us work on to develop. And that's really that's disability confidence training, but from the perspective of a production and what it looks like. We've also recently added to it set signs, which is basically Auslan for filmmaking, and we have our inclusive filmmaking toolkit. And they're 3 really amazing resources that we share with the industry to encourage that confidence. But it's also about being prepared, and ensuring that access and inclusion and that kindness and that inclusion being a culturally safe space where you can bring yourself to work is important to a production and a set as, flagging that there's trip hazards with cords or, other safety requirements. And it's really, really critical to have. I worked with some amazing deaf talent on Friday, and our Auslan interpreters didn't turn up. Luckily, it's me. I'm an intermediate signer. I am not, the best, but, fortunately, because we're planners, I had that whole script translated into Auslan and recorded, broken down into line by line, and I had it on an iPad on a stand. So, be prepared for good producer. So I had that there as a resource. We'd had, amazing lead time with the talent where we had table reads with Auslan interpreters. The team had followed the instructions and learned basic their Auslan signs for set directions. And we got it there. I mean, we had an interpreter turn up in the afternoon, which was amazing, but we had to wing it. And that's really important to me, being from the deaf community, that we have our access needs are paramount. And that's always critical when you're working with disabled talent, but also that asking for your access needs to be met is not being a diva. Yeah. It's just like me, I'm allergic to nuts. So it's just like telling you I can't have nuts in my salad. It's just what I need to stay alive. And so asking for your access needs to be met within a production sense is not being a diva. It's just, saying what you need to have within a production environment to ensure that you can contribute whether you're a performer on screen giving your best performance, or you're a crew member behind the camera doing your job to the best of your ability. Having your access needs met within a production environment is not impossible. It might make a producer work harder. I do recall working on Groundhog Night with Emily, and it was my job to find the location, and it was very stressful to find a house to film in that fit the creative brief, but also meant that Emily could be part of deliver her performance as an actor, but also that she could get to where the lunch was being served, so she can be part of the camaraderie of filmmaking and working in a team. And I did it because we don't budge on it. We just don't.
That's awesome. I suppose one of the lessons there for business is not to assume that all people with disabilities are the same and that we all have the same access requirements, and that's a definite no. And trying to, I suppose what I'm getting at, there are a lot of businesses out there who I might speak to, or brands that I work with, and like, we want to be inclusive, but it's too hard, we don't know how, and so they won't do anything, which isn't the right answer either. But what's the one piece of advice? Emily's rightfully been through a long list, but if you could narrow it down to maybe one or two things, is there a way to do that?
There is. Have a conversation and agree to work together and make it up as you go along. Sometimes you might not get it right. Yep. So, if you're really open, like, we're going to try this, we're going to give it a go, we're open to working with you, and vulnerability and being leaning in and say, we might not get this right on the first go, but we're not going to give up. So work with us and we'll do it together. And I think if we approach many things in life, but also, employment of people with disability, or employment of anyone from communities outside our own, if we agree to work together and say we'll work it on together, we might trip, but we'll pick ourselves up, or we'll look at it a different way, rather than just a flat out, no, it's too hard. You might have amazing talent, you might meet awesome skilled people, and you just, might achieve some amazing things, and be honest that there's going to be bumps in the road, and that's okay.
Great answer. And Emily, from your point of view as a disabled person on set, would you agree or have things to add?
A couple of things, yeah. I would say that it's not too hard, and I would say that if you keep an open mind, I think one of the barriers that people come up against when they're employing people with disability is that it's going to take too much money, it's going to take more time, it's going to be less efficient for people with disability to be employed in your organisation. TCM can tell you that's absolutely not true. I can tell you that's absolutely not true. Myself and all of the people with disability that I know who are employed, or also who contribute in any way to society, which is basically anyone, take it very seriously, take opportunities very seriously, and will actually be, I would say, better workers than the average non-disabled person, because we know what it's like to not get those opportunities. The other thing that I would say is, if you've met one person with disability, you've met one person with disability. I am an expert in my own experience. I'm not an expert in anyone else's experience. I do know a lot of things about disability and inclusion more generally, and I'm always working to inform myself about other experiences. But when you are engaging with the disability community, make sure that's broad and purpose built for what you need. A perfect example is, so I live with a high care needs physical disability. Some of my support workers on my team have other access needs, so they might be neurodiverse or have various psychosocial disabilities. And so I learn a lot about working with those needs and accommodating those needs. And what I find working together is that we both make a contribution to each other's lives, and we're stronger for it. So I think that's a perfect example of where disability employment is really important and can be really well done.
And Tracey, you've done some incredible work all around the globe with Stereotype Alliance as well, which is part of UN Women. Can you tell us a little bit more? Have a big old chat about the awesome things you've been doing.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I have been very lucky to do some exceptional things. So, yes, Bus Stop Films, we are an ally to the Stereotype Alliance, which is a global initiative out of UN Women that was birthed out of ridding advertising of gender stereotypes, but it's really morphed into intersectional inclusion and really unpacking how we make advertising more or less stereotypical of all the myths and bias that come from any community group. So in Australia, we're an ally to that, and that, it was pioneered by Unilever. So earlier this year, I got to go to New York to the global summit of the Stereotype Alliance and speak about Bus Stop's work and our approach to inclusive production and some of the bigger projects that we'd worked on. So working on the Unilever, their global set commitment to have a person with disability on every production of content that they make around the world, and to work with them on their inclusive production toolkit, and also to the big project that we worked on over the last 12 months, which was the MasterCard Touch project, where we worked with the blind low vision community to create an imageless feature film as part of MasterCard's launch of the Touch MasterCard, which was a really exciting project to be part of, and very exciting for little old me from here in the Shire to travel all the way to New York and talk at the United Nations. For a confident speaker, I was very nervous to do that. It was very exciting, and we're excited now to be continuing that advocacy work with our upcoming Driving Change Summit, which you will be part of, and Emily will be part of as well.
Yeah, really excited that that's happening. Complete disclosure, Emily and I are all a part of it. We're both on the advisory panel for that. But tell us all about it. I know the answers, but tell our listeners.
So later this year in November in Bondi, which is Australia's little bit of Hollywood, we'll be hosting the first ever employment summit looking at disability employment across film, TV and advertising. And I got the idea because last year there was a summit in Canberra around employment, which is awesome, and I really wanted to be part of it. But only 2 people from the screen industry were invited, and often the screen industry is overlooked around employment policy because people don't often think about people with disability working in the screen industry. Go figure that we would want to have jobs in creative industries. And I was like, that's such a shame that those 2 people from the screen industry who got invited, and neither are with disability. So I just thought, why don't we just make our own summit? If you don't get a seat at the table, build your own table. So we did, and it's been amazing to come together, and I've had great support from Screen Australia and Netflix and Screen New South Wales to support it over 2 days to really elevate, celebrate, and explore what does disability employment look like, what's the role of government, what's the experience of the deaf community, which is more than just Auslan and captions, what's happening within the First Nations perspective, what's happening in advertising. I know that you're hosting our panel for the Unstereotype Alliance, and really doing it in a way that's commensurate with how the screen industry comes together. When the screen industry has a conference, it's sexy, there's welcome drinks, there is a really lovely location, and I'm sure Lisa and Em, you'll appreciate, often disability events are in a scout hall with caterers, blend coffee and a packet of biscuits. They're very bland. But we wanted to make sure that this event looked and sounded and felt like a screen industry event. And so we've got Hannah Divany and the team from Audrey and Job Access coming along to show us the beautiful film that Hannah stars in, but also talk about Job Access support of the feature film Audrey, because it was the first screen production that Job Access had ever supported. So I want to know what's the magic ingredient that unlocks that support, and really hear from the people in the know, the knowledge makers, the policy makers, the creatives. We have over 50 speakers, with more than half of them people from the disability community from across Australia. And we're also bringing out Keely Catwells, who is amazing advocate for disability representation in Hollywood, and is the co-founder of Making Space Media. And she's been doing a lot of work with Netflix and Hello Sunshine to really move the needle on disability representation in Hollywood as well. So I'm really excited for it, that we're bringing the disability community to Bondi to really, move the needle, bring together, have a conversation, and get some things moving.
Yeah, Keely's doing some really great things. And I'm so excited that you're bringing both of the worlds together, because so often it's one or the other. All the people with disabilities in a hall talking about our stuff, or all the people from the film industry in a big fancy shindig talking about their stuff. But we need to work together.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me as well about Inclusively Made, which I'm so stoked to hear about. But how long has it been going for?
So Inclusively Made was officially launched earlier this year, and it's the brainchild of Henry Smith and Genevieve Clay-Smith from Taste Creative, and of course Jen is the co-founder of Bus Stop Films. And it really is about the benchmark of what does an inclusively made production look like, and working with brands and productions on a point system to certify their production as being inclusively made. So as a consumer, when we watch that, and if you watch the Bupa ad that's out at the moment around the Paralympics, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the little inclusively made icon. That tells you that that piece of content was made with the contribution of people with disability at every step of the way. So, in script development, in casting, and in crew, that production recognised the contribution of people with disability. And it's similar to the Heart Foundation tick. When we pick up the box in the supermarket, we know, oh, this is a good product for me because it's gone through a process. When you watch that piece of content, you go, oh, I know that ad or that TV show was made in partnership with people with disability because it's got that little inclusively made logo on it.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that ad because I've actually acknowledged the fact that we're not just here talking about disability while the Paralympics is on, but we're doing it 365 days a year. So credit to the copywriter, whoever it was, on that piece. It's a really, really great shot.
Awesome.
Okay, we'll just have a tiny little break now. I'll get back to you guys. Oh, okay. No, I'm okay. So now both of you, I'll ask the same question, but from your different perspectives. What advice would you give to someone who wants to get into the film TV industry on either side of the camera, either script writing behind the scenes or an actor in front of the camera?
I would just, because when I first started as an artist, I did not feel that the industry was sort of friendly to me. I wasn't sure whether there was a place for me as a professional artist. So the first thing that I would say is, you are welcome here and we need you here and you can make a great contribution and there is space for your stories and I can't wait to hear them. There are really brilliant examples around of artists working in this space, and sort of most of us are pretty amenable to getting in touch with us. You can get in touch with organizations like Bus Stop Films, look at resources like the toolkit that Bus Stop Films has made. There are other resources around for emerging artists as well. But mostly once you've started with that kind of research and with that attitude that there is a place for you, just being open to opportunities, going where things take you, trying to meet people, being upfront about your access needs, because I know it's difficult, but there's no shame in needing what you need to do your job. So yeah, it's a long journey, but it's a really beautiful one. And I can't wait to see who else can be involved in it.
What about you, Trace?
Well, my hints and tips for this crazy industry make friends and be kind. It is an industry based on relationships and who you know, but and that makes it challenging because there's no linear way to get into the screen industry, and that can be even more challenging if you have a disability because we're often not invited to the networking drinks where the deals are made and the jobs get picked up. So join up Bus Stop Employment. So our employment service is open to anyone with a disability looking for work across film, TV and commercial production. But also, I don't encourage people to work for free in any stretch, but it is about getting connected. We all start out in this sector maybe volunteering on a production and meeting people and getting to know people. Volunteering at a film festival or a conference like Screen Forever is a great way to meet and connect. But also, back yourselves. Have a conversation with the screen agencies in your state. Reach out to Bus Stop, come along and meet our teams, come to our showcases, get connected. There's a lot of great Facebook groups that both Em and I are in. CAC is one of my favourite ones. Which is about disabled creatives and connecting. And this is an industry where two people connecting and coming together and sharing an ideas can really fruit something. So, there are challenges to that, but there are beautiful wins as well. So, connecting with others that are also, creating content or creative people, not necessarily just other people with disability, because that's quite limiting. And the best opportunities and I think projects come when people from different walks of life collaborate together. But really, connecting, joining a Facebook group, getting going to film festivals, making friends and just putting yourself out there a little bit, I think it's a great way to get into this industry because there is no standard pathway in. It's not like being a plumber that you do you look up the job on on, and you apply for the apprenticeship and you go to TAFE, and it's very straightforward. There's just so many ways that you can. No, it doesn't work like that. There's so many ways to get into the industry, but it really does come down to relationship building.
Oh, for sure. And going back to what you said about being kind as well, just a decent human being doesn't hurt either.
No, absolutely. It's my biggest piece of advice, because it's not an industry known for being kind, but the reason I feel that I've got ahead and Bus Stop has grown so much is because we don't budge from being kind.
That's a good way to be. And all of those resources and everything that you mentioned before, is there one place people can find those if they're looking to get on board with Bus Stop, be it as a business who wants to make an inclusive production, or someone who wants to be a camera operator or an actor? What's the best place?
So drop onto our website, busstopfilms.com.au. They can find out information for employers. They can find out information for people looking for work, and find out the information about our accessible film studies program, and also about the upcoming Driving Change Summit.
Yeah, summit. And Emily, sorry. Go again. Got a bit of an echo. All good? Okay, good. And Emily, what about you? What's the first place for people to find you and read more about everything?
You can look me up. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Emily-Artist and Advocate. Again, I'm very open to having conversations. If people want to work with me, or if they're looking for opportunities, I'm very happy to sort of broker those relationships for people that they need. I'm very excited about the Driving Change Summit in November, which I will also be speaking at, and on a panel for, so you can see me there as well. And I am also doing a show because I'm Sydney based, I'm doing a show at Sydney Fringe Festival in September, in a couple of weeks, called Em and Maddie Solve Your Problems, where I'll be working with a beautiful comedian by the name of Madeline Stewart, who you will also be able to see at the Driving Change Summit. So it's all a very full circle moment that we're all coming together, so it's very nice.
Excellent. You're all over the socials.
Yes.
And we always ask our guests at the end of every app, what's one thing about them that's unexpected? So I'll start with you, Trace.
What's one thing about me that's unexpected? Oh, I really, really love my footy, and I'm a huge Cronulla Sharks fan. And yes, I was there that day in 2016 when we won the grand final against Melbourne Storm. And yeah, I'm a bit of a footy lover. I'm a footy tragic, actually. I love my NRL.
Closet bogan.
Closet bogan. Closet bogan. I own it. I love my footy.
I know nothing about football, so I have no idea which game you're referring to, but I'll take it that it was a big one. And Emily, what about you is unexpected?
Well, I'm not sure that this is unexpected, but I'll just go because Tracey talked about being a footy fan. So the big thing that I'm a fan of is Taylor Swift.
Cool.
So yes, and that's a huge part of my identity, and it's almost, people would say it's an obsession. So I do have an obsession with Taylor Swift that I am very loud and proud about. If you look me up on social media, that's probably what you're going to hear about. Cool. So,
were you at her concert when she came to Australia?
It was one of the best nights of my life.
Awesome.
Yes. And yes, so that's me, big Swiftie.
Tracey and Emily, thank you both so much for being on the podcast today. Your experiences are just phenomenal. and look forward to seeing and hearing about what you're doing in the future.
Thank you. I couldn't think of a better way to spend my 50th birthday than chatting to you two legends.
Can't believe you took the time out of birthday celebrations for your 50th to speak with us. We're honoured.
Yeah.
You're a legend, Grace.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emily.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to That Was Unexpected. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, then hit subscribe wherever you get your fix. Have any questions or topics that you'd love for us to tackle? Great! Email podcast@youngcare.com.au. We can't wait to hear from you. Check out our show notes for transcripts, video recordings, and to find out more about our guests, plus the useful resources they share. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn at Youngcare Oz. Let's not forget, an inclusive community is everyone's business. So let's keep working together to break down barriers and smash some stereotypes.